Albertadromeus. It's one of those names that just sparks your curiosity, isn't it?
It really does.
Especially when you find out it means runner from Alberta. You instantly think, okay, what's the story here? What did they find?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at Albertadromeus, this relatively small dinosaur from the late Cretaceous. We're talking about, 77 million years ago or so.
Right, the middle Campanian stage.
Yeah, precisely. And our guide for this is the research paper from 2013 that actually introduced this dinosaur to the world.
Now, I know some people might hear another dinosaur name and sort of, tune out, but this is fascinating because it shows how scientists work, right? How they take what seems like just a few bones
Sometimes very few.
and piece together this whole picture of an extinct animal, its life, its environment, even its family tree. It's like paleontological detective work.
It really is. And they managed to get a surprising amount of detail from limited remains in this case.
So we're heading back to the late Cretaceous, specifically Alberta, Canada, the Oldman Formation.
That's the spot. And that formation itself tells us a lot. We're looking at what was likely an ancient coastal plain environment back then.
Okay, let's get into the name itself. Albertadromeus syntarsus. It sounds technical, but you said it's full of clues.
Absolutely packed. So Albertadromeus, Alberta for the location, obviously, and Dromeus, that's Greek for runner. So runner from Alberta.
Okay, that fits the image. What about syntarsus?
Right. Syn is Greek for together or fused, and tarsus refers to the ankle, so fused ankle.
Ah, so the name tells us it's a runner from Alberta with a fused ankle. That's pretty specific.
It is. It points directly to a key anatomical feature we'll discuss more.
And the team who named it in 2013, Caleb Marshall-Brown, David Evans, Michael Ryan, Anthony Russell, it feels quite recent, really. Like discoveries are still happening all the time.
Oh, constantly. And the main specimen, the one, everything's based on the holotype, it's cataloged as TMP 2009.037.0004.
And what does that actually include? What bones are we talking about?
Okay, so there are two vertebrae from the back, dorsal vertebrae, one from the tail, a caudal vertebra, some neck ribs, ossified tendons, which is interesting.
Tendons turn to bone.
Yeah, basically. And then the crucial leg bones,
Mm-hmm.
the left tibia and fibula, that's the main shin bone, and the smaller one next to it, part of the right fibula too. And then just fragments of a foot bone, a metatarsal, and a claw bone, and ungual.
That's it. No skull.
No skull found yet, no. Which is a shame, but not uncommon.
It sounds like. Well, not a lot to go on.
You'd think so, perhaps. But the researchers made a specific point in the paper that the preservation quality, even of these few bones, was good enough. Good enough to confidently say, yes, this is a distinct new species.
That's incredible. So what could they tell right away from those pieces? What was the initial picture?
Well, the first thing was its size small. And it clearly walked on two legs, so bipedal. And crucially, it looked like it was built for running. The term they use is cursorially adapted.
Built to run. And how did they know that from just those leg bones?
The key was the tibia, the main shin bone. It was relatively long, elongated. In the animal kingdom, particularly with dinosaurs, a longer lower leg compared to the thigh bone is often a really strong indicator of running ability, cursorial habits.
So they could compare it to others.
Exactly. They looked at its tibia length relative to its likely overall size and compared it to other small plant-eating dinosaurs from around that time or similar groups.
Like who?
Well, its tibia was a bit more elongated than an Orodromeus, which is another small one we'll talk about. But compared to dinosaurs like Parksosaurus, Thescelosaurus, Hypsilophodon, Dryosaurus, even the thicker-skulled Stegosaurus, Albertadromeus's tibia was significantly longer relatively.
Wow. So the runner from Alberta wasn't just a catchy name. It was likely quite speedy compared to many of its neighbors.
It seems very likely, yes. And you can imagine in a world with big predators, that speed would be pretty useful for staying alive.
Absolutely. So besides the overall shape, what about the nitty-gritty details? Specific bone features?
Right, the diagnosis, the things that really define it. The 2013 paper listed a few key ones. One is that fused ankle we mentioned, the bottom third of the fibula, the smaller bone, is actually fused solid to the bottom of the tibia.
The syntarsus.
Exactly, that together ankle. Interestingly, that specific fusion is also seen in a more primitive group, the heterodontosaurids.
So it's a clue, but not totally unique to Albertadromeus.
Correct. It helps place it in the broader context, but it's shared with some others. Another feature is on the top of the tibia, where it connects to the knee. The outer bump there, the lateral condyle, is strongly bilobed. It has two distinct parts or lobes.
Okay.
And that feature is shared with quite a few other related dinosaurs, Chinchinsaurus, Eocursor, Hypsilophodon, Johalosaurus, Lisothosaurus, Orodromeus, and Eryctodromeus. Finding these shared details helps map out relationships.
It's like connecting the dots between species using these tiny bone shapes. What was the third main feature?
That's something called the caninial crest. It's a prominent ridge at the very top of the tibia, sticking forward and slightly outward. It's where major leg muscles attach.
Ah, for power.
Right. In Albertadromeus, this crest projects upwards and forwards outwards in a way that makes the very top surface of the tibia slope backwards. And this specific shape is also seen in Gaspernosaura and Micropachycephalosaurus.
Interesting. So different dinosaurs evolving similar solutions, maybe?
Possibly. Convergent evolution, perhaps, or just features retained in certain lineages. These details are the breadcrumbs scientists follow.
And following those breadcrumbs, this discovery actually led to rethinking some relationships, didn't it? They proposed a whole new group, Orodromenae.
That's right. Based on Albertadromeus and dinosaurs that seemed closely related to it, like Orodromeus, the researchers proposed this new subfamily, Orodromenae. The idea was to group dinosaurs that seemed closer to Orodromeus than they were to, say, Thescelosaurus. It's about refining that family tree.
Okay, so what characteristics define this Orodromenae group? What tied them together?
They identified several shared traits. One involves the foramen magnum, the big hole at the back of the skull where the spinal cord enters. In these dinosaurs, its width is consistently between about 20% and 30% of the width of the occipital condyle, the knob connecting the skull to the neck.
Okay, quite specific.
Very. Another is that the pubis bone in the hip actually connects to one of the sacral ribs. Then there's a sharp spine on the shoulder blade, the scapula. And finally, the shaft of the fibula, that smaller leg bone again, is kind of D-shaped if you cut it across.
These sound like really subtle things.
They can be, but when you find a consistent pattern of these features across several species, it strongly suggests they share a unique evolutionary history.
So who ended up in this proposed Orodromenae group?
Based on their analysis, it included Albertadromeus itself, plus Zephyrosaurus, Orodromeus, and Eryctodromeus.
And did they figure out the relationships within that group?
They did a phylogenetic analysis, which is basically using software to figure out the most likely family tree based on all these anatomical features. Their results suggested that Albertadromeus, Zephyrosaurus, and Orodromeus formed a tight cluster, a clade.
Like close cousins.
Exactly, with Eryctodromeus as a slightly more distant relative within the Orodromenae.
The paper included one of those tree diagrams, a cladogram, didn't it?
Yes, it visualizes their hypothesis. You see Albertadromeus, Orodromeus, and Zephyrosaurus branching off together within Orodromenae. And Orodromenae itself sits within a larger family, Thescelosauridae.
Okay. And who else is in Thescelosauridae according to that diagram?
Well, there's another branch called Thescelosaurina that includes things like Parksosaurus, Chanctionsaurus, Hya, Johalosaurus, and the two species of Thescelosaurus itself, T. cinnabuensis and T. neglectus.
So it really lays out how they think all these small bipedal herbivores might be related based on those shared bone features.
Precisely. It's the best interpretation given the evidence they had. Of course, new fossils can always lead to adjustments down the line. That's science.
Absolutely. So we have this small, fast runner with its unique angle fitting into this Orodromenae branch. But where exactly was it running? Tell us more about the discovery site.
Right, the Canal Creek locality. It's in the Upper Oldman Formation, which is part of the Bigger Belly River group in Alberta. The specific bones were found in a layer of very fine sandstone, about 2 meters thick.
Fine sandstone. Does that tell us anything?
It suggests deposition in relatively calm water, maybe not a raging river, but perhaps a slower part or a floodplain, or near the coast, which fits the bigger picture.
The bigger picture being that ancient coastal plain you mentioned. What was Alberta like then?
Yeah, studies of the Oldman Formation point to a coastal plain environment. So think rivers winding through a fairly flat landscape, probably lush vegetation, swamps, maybe closer to the coast of the Western Interior Seaway that existed back then. Very different from today's Alberta.
Hard to picture. And who else was living there? Who were Albertadromeus' neighbors? It couldn't have been alone.
Definitely not. The Oldman Formation has yielded a fantastic array of dinosaurs. So picture little Albertadromeus darting around and sharing that space with, well, some serious predators.
Uh-oh. Like who?
Like the big Tyrannosaur Daspletosaurus.
Yeah.
Also, smaller, faster predators, like Sarnitholestes, Trudon, and Dromaeosaurus.
Yikes. Quite the threat list.
For sure. And then you have lots of plant eaters, too. Bighorn dinosaurs, the ceratopsids, Albertoceratops, Chasmosaurus, Anchiceratops, Coronosaurus, and a whole bunch of duck-billed hadrosaurs, Brachylophosaurus, Gryposaurus, Parasaurolophus, Maiasaura, Corythosaurus.
Wow. So it was living in the shadows of giants, essentially, both plant eaters and meat eaters.
Pretty much. Being small and fast would have been a major advantage in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
That fused ankle and long shin bones start to make even more sense, don't they?
They really do. Survival adaptations in action. And the actual bones that tell this story, that they're safe now, right?
Oh, yes. The holotype specimen is housed at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology in Drumheller, Alberta. A fantastic museum if you ever get the chance to visit.
Definitely on the list. Okay, so let's sort of bring this all together. We've explored Albertadromeus, this runner from Alberta,
Mm-hmm.
a small dinosaur, late Cretaceous, identified from just a handful of bones, really.
But well-preserved ones.
Right. And those bones revealed its fused ankle syntarsus, pointed to its speed through that long tibia, and helped scientists place it in this Orodromene group within the larger dinosaur family tree.
It's a great example of how much we can learn from fragments, piecing together the puzzle of the past.
And that name, Runner from Alberta, it just fits perfectly with the physical evidence, doesn't it?
It really does capture its essence based on what the fossils tell us.
It makes you wonder, trying to picture it. This little quick dinosaur navigating that busy, dangerous world on the ancient coastal plain, zipping between giant herbivores, constantly watching out for those big theropods.
What else might be hiding in those Oldman Formation rocks? Maybe more of Albertadromeus? Perhaps even a skull one day? Or other small creatures we don't even know about yet?
It definitely fuels the imagination, makes you appreciate the ongoing discoveries coming out of places like Alberta, revealing more and more about these incredible lost worlds.